Previously on As the World Turns. Jumping on enemies' heads, sliding down hills, collecting carrots instead of coins, and a few other things. But the colors and the feel of the game just scream Mario 3, more than just being an influence.
And I can't necessarily call this a bad thing. Clones are generally looked down on because of their lack of originality, but Mario 3 is a classic for a reason, and the formula works really well for Tiny Toons.
But there are some differences. Buster controls pretty decently, he jumps well, his dash is handy, and it's easy to figure out, but there is one major error, and that is his attack move. Especially if he got used to just jumping to knock enemies out of the way. In this one, he has this weird flip thing that not only is awkward to control, and it feels very unsure where the attack actually lands.
Collect enough points to buy 50 tickets to get into the final stage. Both options are difficult and tedious.
I guess it's good to have options, but both kinda suck. Either you complete all 4 areas, or you just keep playing all 4 areas until you rack up enough points to get 50 tickets. So you pick one ride and hope you win, but you don't, so use the points to go to Shirley the Loon and buy more tickets, then you take those tickets and ride another ride, but don't get enough points to buy more tickets, so you try again, only to waste more tickets in order to get more points to try and buy more tickets so you can try a different ride. It's a stupid concept.
Now it's time to check out Buster's Hidden Treasure. This game came out on the Sega Genesis at the same time as Buster's Bust Loose came out for the Super Nintendo, but this game was never released in Japan. This game has a very Sega feel, which is great, and it's much closer to the original NES game than all the other sequels. So let's dive in and check it out.
The mechanics of the game are back to that more standard platformer, much like the original NES game. Buster's back to just jumping on enemies. There's no weird attack move this time. Buster Jump is odd though again, like the NES sequel Trouble in Wacky Land, where the jump differs on how much you push the button. If you tap it, he jumps short and falls quickly. If you hold it, he has a longer jump. It is a little less awkward than the NES version, but still not the greatest. It doesn't ruin the game though, so that is a plus. Unlike a lot of the other games where you hold a button to run, Buster speeds up as you hold the directional pad down. This is odd at first, but it is easily adjusted to, and it doesn't hinder the gameplay. Buster does run pretty fast at full speed. It's a Genesis game, so I would expect nothing less.
So this game could be called a hodgepodge of Sonic and Mario themes, and you'll see more of that as I go through the game. Also as a bonus, this game is much longer than all the other games I reviewed so far.
Just look at this overworld map, which reminds me very much of Super Mario World, but it already seems like they spent more time on this than either of the NES or SNES sequels. You have several levels in different stages, each with a boss at the end. The first stages are pretty standard grassy areas, lots of rolling hills and some passage underground. These really feel reminiscent of a Sonic game and are really easy to run through at full speed, once you get the hang of the game. And of course, there are some ideas for Mario games when it comes to platforming too. It might seem a little cheap to just combine Sonic and Mario qualities to try and make a game, but there is enough original material that it really doesn't matter. Plus, unlike a lot of the other times that this happens, it does work here. You'll later get into forest areas that have large running rivers, and this weird one where you must find your way through the trees via these chutes built into the trees. You'll then move on to this cramped and slightly annoying cave levels, and then the difficult but fun lava pits. A lot of them don't require much exploration. If you really don't want to mess with that, Buster's speed and jump, once you get used to it, will get you around most enemies and obstacles with ease, especially in the beginning. The later levels can get a little hairy and difficult to maneuver through with enemies getting in the way just at the right time. But it's never too difficult to the point of ridiculousness, and the curve is well managed. Plus, with the addition of passwords, you should have no real issues getting through the game. To complete the levels, and this is true for all the levels, you have to find Go-Go Dodo. The cool thing is that you don't always just need to run from one side to another. Sometimes Go-Go is standing much closer to the beginning of the level, just hidden away in a corner somewhere. It makes you want to explore the levels a little bit more. The boss fights involve the mad scientist from the show, Gene Splicer, who's used his mind control helmet to pit your friends against you. So you get to fight Plucky, Dizzy, and others. Gene Splicer also plays a role in the levels, mostly just being a distraction or trying to block you from getting away from the others. Once you jump on his head a few times, you'll break the helmet and he escapes. I love the discussions that take place once you win. They talk to each other in such a proper manner. They use their full names and everything. It really just doesn't fit with a Tiny Toons feel.
I sure you don't want me to talk about every level? I'm not going to anyway. But there is more to this game. There are collectibles, power-ups, and some secrets to flesh everything out. Some of these power-ups have a very Sega feel. Konami is really trying to play to this console's audience.
Back in this game are the numerous amounts of carrots to grab in each level. They don't give you extra lives like in the original game, so they don't seem as necessary to collect, but there is a bonus if you climb all the branches and check all the caves for every carrot. If you notice, in the upper left hand corner on the screen, there's this little box with the character from the cartoon sitting there. This represents your special attack, and for every 50 carrots you collect, you get to have one of those to use. In what feels like a very classic arcade style, this character will appear on screen and clear it of all enemies. My favorite is Sneezer, who floats on the stage all calmly and adorably, only to let out his infamous sneeze and knock all the enemies away. Which attack you have is random by the level, but they all work the same, so it doesn't really matter. You can find the power-ups floating around too on occasion, so you don't always need to collect 50 carrots. There is also the occasional invincibility power-up, which acts just like you think it would. You flash a ton of colors and you can run through levels as fast as you want, taking out all the enemies in your path. They aren't very common though. You also have floating hearts, which you guessed it, refill your heart bar. There are also little bells floating around, which, really oddly, give you an extra heart and refill your meter. I don't really see the connection, though I guess if I question that, I have to question why a flower makes a fat plumber shoot fire. You can also find the little rainbow circle symbols from time to time to access a special stage. In these stages, your goal is to avoid a large amount of Go-Go Dodos and collect everything you can. The end of the stage probably holds a 1-up for you. If you touch a Go-Go before the end, you'll leave at that moment. I guess I probably really didn't need to explain that.
It has its flaws, and like the original, it does kind of stem from other games, but it would be a lie to say that it's not a fun game to play. It's actually really addicting, and you kind of forgive the flaws pretty quickly. It's a decent game to have in any Genesis library.
I can't call it a 10, but it is the most enjoyable sequel of all the sequels. The game functions well, controls well, looks good, and super fun. The flaws in how you work up to your dash and the odd jumping mechanic are forgotten pretty quickly. Also, unlike the NES sequel, the jumping mechanic doesn't really feel as flawed here. They must have spent just a little bit of extra time on it. I think some of the extra parts of the game, such as the bonuses and extra power-ups, could have used some polish to flesh out the game a little bit more, but I don't really miss them when I play through. This is kind of how I feel about the entire game. Sure, they could have done this with that, but I don't think it hurts anything that they did. It's just hard for me to complain about this game.
But really, I guess I don't need to find anything to complain about. To compare these to the other games, all that needs to be said is that this one is worth a buy, and the other sequels really aren't. Well, I guess I can't say they're not worth the buy. They all have their moments, and if anything, they're worth collecting. But if you only had to pick one, I would pick Buster's Hidden Treasure. Well, that wraps up the Tiny Toon games for now, because mostly I don't own the other ones, but I may get to them later. But I'll see you next time.